Hello, my name is Michael Lambert, and today I want to talk a little bit about some of the stories that have been in the news in the last week or so, and I also want to talk a little bit about what's likely to happen once the Tories are defeated at the next general election, which seems virtually certain. Now, the first story that caught my eye was that Jeremy Hunt is backtracking on his promise to cut taxes. I think this is following a rap over the knuckles by the IMF, who seem to suggest that for a country that has public services in such a state and an economy which is not doing very well, that it was inappropriate. It would be inappropriate to cut taxes. So we're not going to get, and all those rich people are not going to get the big tax cuts they're expecting, which is very disappointing. In terms of wasting money, 7 firms who got contracts worth a total of £611 million for PPE, 7 of them have actually closed altogether. So they've gone, the money's gone, the directors would have disappeared, the money be in tax havens, I expect. And those people will be buying themselves nice yachts and Bentleys and houses in Florida and so on. This is an indictment, of course, to the enormous waste overall in PPP, which is apparently well over 14 or 15 billion pounds. That's PP that couldn't be used, that has been stored, a lot of it, and a lot is being burnt. Just like the fact that the NHS bought loads of thousands of ventilators for £50,000 each. And these, if you want a bargain, they're now available for about £100. But good news on the financial side is that profits of the biggest, the FTSE 350 companies are up on average by 89%. So it's not all bad news. For the poor people, well, people are getting desperate. Shoplifting, it's up. In England and Wales, it's the highest level for 20 years. There were 400,000 cases of shoplifting last year. That's people getting desperate. It's the highest ever recorded. It's 32% up on the previous year. You know what we're going to find now, especially with small corner shops and so on. They're going to be putting up those metal grills that they have in America and some of those shops that you see in those sort of films where the sort of gangsters and people go around with guns and things. You know, people have to protect their shopkeepers, have to protect their merchandise. Import checks, well, they've been very much in the news this week, haven't they? At long last, we finally had to do what Rees-Mogg told us all would be an act of self-harm. We've had to impose, as we should have done from the start, had to impose import controls. They're being brought in gradually over 3 stages. This is going to result in a considerable drop in the number of exporters exporting from the EU to the UK, because they're going to find it too complicated, too difficult, and too expensive. And so what we're going to find is that there's going to be less selection in the shops. We've already seen the gaps in the shelves and the fact that a lot of shops are not stocking what they used to. A lot of the fruit and vegetables on the shop shelves are already going off when they get here. That's all going to get much, much worse. And of course, food prices are going to go up, but we know about that. We've talked about it before. Of the £120 million sent to Rwanda, apparently 21% of it is being spent on buildings for all the people we're going to send there. And at the same time, as I think I might have mentioned previously, Rwanda in the last few years have sent us, the last 3 years, I think, have sent us 10 refugees who've been granted asylum on the grounds, according to the Home Office, that their fear of persecution was well founded. I saw an article in Der Spiegel, and this is a very well-respected German magazine, and as you will know, of course, that Germany is doing so much worse than we are. I mean, the recession, the whole economy is collapsing, like the whole of the EU, much, much, much worse than the UK. But what they said at the start of this article was as follows. They said, food shortages, mouldy apartments, a lack of medical workers. The UK is facing a perfect storm of struggle, and millions are sliding into poverty. There is little to suggest that improvement will come anytime soon. That's how others see us. It's very difficult to hide this poverty, this desperation, this doom and gloom. It's all about us. And you're seeing more and more the newspapers now actually fessing up to the fact that Brexit was a disaster. On the brighter side of things, it was revealed that Boris Johnson, on the night of on 31st of January 2020, when we finally left the EU after he signed his up and ready deal, he spent 7,847 of our pounds on a party, which is nice. It's nice. The government is criminalising rough sleepers. Now this is long overdue. This should have been a long time ago. You know, if people are sleeping outside because they've got nowhere to sleep, I mean, you just make them into criminals, take them to court. They're going to fine them up to £2,500, and they have to be considered offensive. And if they're smelly, that counts as being offensive. So if you're smelly and you're sleeping in a doorway, you could be fined up to £2,500. This is an excellent project because this will solve the problem, because all these people, once they're hit in their pockets, these tramps and desperate people sleeping rough and begging, once you hit them in their pockets, that will clear the problem. That's good solid Tory policy. And of course, the government are plotting to. The Tories are plotting to get rid of Sunak. The favourite dream candidate is the incredibly rude, aggressive, arrogant, and extremely unpleasant Kemi Badenoch. She's the Wonder Woman who can transform her. She can make everything right. You just have a list of 5 minutes to see how. What an incredibly good choice that will be, and how that will transform the Tories' fortunes, I'm sure. And so, there's been a lot of publicity this week about Brexit, and you can see more and more. Every week it seems to accelerate the amount of bad news concerning the consequences of Brexit, and how what an utter disaster, and what a pathetic mess we're in. And yet, with all the celebration, we've had all these people out, all these people who backed Brexit from the start, people like David Davis and Andrea Leserman and Rees-Mogg and all the rest of them out telling us about what a fantastic success it's been. David Davis was asked by Andrew Mars to do you think it was a success? He said he thought it was a fantastic success. Asked to judge it out of 10, he said he thought it was 8 out of 10. 8 out of 10. Andrea Leadsom, I mean, she's the woman who's been going around saying everybody knew, we all knew, businesses knew that there were going to be all these barriers to trade once we left the EU. She's a woman who's recorded, and you've probably seen it on Twitter and so on, saying that there would never be any barriers to trade whatsoever. And when challenged about how this is going to affect business, I'll quote exactly what she said, because it's really quite profound, actually. What she said, and she was a former business minister, so she should know about these things. This is, I think, the quote of the week. She said, "Businesses always face the cost of doing business." I'd never thought of that before. It's really worth thinking about that. And so the Tories just get to seem to be more and more desperate by the day. I mean, they are in such a mess. So many factions. They have a leader, Sunak, who is frankly absolutely pathetic, but is thoroughly disliked, it would appear. No end of people ganging up and ready to criticise him. The poor man is absolutely pathetic. And to give him his due, quite frankly, I mean, no one in that position trying to herd cats, which is what trying to control the Conservative Party is. He's in an impossible position. And we already know that 50-odd Tory MPs have already said they're not going to stand next time, and the rest of them know the game's up. But he's desperate. He's desperate. He really wants to hang on. He really doesn't want to go or to call a general election. And so he's got to the position where he's lying all the time. He's lying in Parliament. Whenever he's asked a question, he's lying. He's nervous. He's jittery. He's hopeless. You probably saw that time last week or the week before when he was confronted by a woman about the state of the NHS, and he laughed in her face. And likewise, in PMQs last week, Starmer asked him a question about somebody who I think worked for Iceland or something, and his mortgage got up £1,000 a month or something. And Sunak sat there laughing. He's in, as I say, he's in an impossible position. He's no idea what to do. He never should have become Prime Minister. He should have stayed an accountant or working in the city or whatever. He doesn't have any political skills. He doesn't have any charm. He doesn't have much personality. He's just a dull little robot. Really, it's just hopeless. The longer he stays, the worse things get. And the more and more, and this is the worst thing about it, the more and more all his rich mates are being favoured with tax cuts, and the more and more they're squeezing poor people. So it's pretty obvious that the Tories are not going to survive. It seems extremely unlikely. Even Starmer can't lose this election. But what's got us into this mess, above everything else, is Brexit. Brexit is responsible for this terrible mess. Brexit is responsible for a complete lack of any confidence, optimism in the country. Whoever you speak to, wherever you are in the country, everybody is concerned about the future because everybody knows that things are going badly. That is a terrible position from which to start. And so when we get the new Labour government, what are they going to do with regard to Brexit? Well, they are the strongest supporters of Brexit in the country. Starmer's been saying for the last 3 years that under his leadership, Labour will never take us back into attempt to take us back into the single market customs union or agree to freedom of movement or ever attempt to rejoin the EU. Instead, what he's going to do is he's going to grow the economy and make us all very successful outside. As he said himself, Britain's position is outside of the EU. And you see, what people will say when you say, well, that's pretty stupid, say, oh, he's got to say that. He's got to lie in order to get the votes of the red wall seat people. And if he doesn't lie to them, they're not going to vote for him. This is a crazy policy. Yet he's repeat it. It's not something he can really backtrack from. It's going to be very, very difficult. If his passionate desire is to rejoin the EU, it's going to be very, very difficult because he's been so absolutely adamant that we will never, under his leadership, rejoin the EU. Rachel Reeves at Davos last couple of weeks ago, she said, and I quote exactly, she said, Britain is outside the EU, the SM, and the CU, and free movement, and those things will not change under Labour. So she's confirming it. And she said at the same time, Britain is open for business. Now, this is a time when 539,000 businesses are under severe financial stress. And my question is this, how are they going to do it? How are they going to get this growth? How if I, as much as anybody else, would rather see Starmer as Prime Minister than Sunak. I passionately, like most of the country, want to see the back of the Tories. They've done so much damage. They are utterly incompetent, dishonest, corrupt, inept. I want to see the back of them. And Labour is the only alternative, so I passionately want to see Labour as the government. But my reservation is, and I know this will upset all sorts of people, my reservation is that they're going to find it impossible because they're going to be confronted with a situation which is almost impossible, a collapsing economy, very low morale, very little inward investment. All these new import controls are going to make life much, much more difficult for almost all of us because prices of food are going to go up and there are going to be shortages and so on. So how are they going to do it? And how at the same time are they going to fix the NHS, which requires billions and billions and billions because they're not going to increase taxes and they're not going to increase borrowing. Where's the money going to come from? Oh, they're going for growth, they say. How? To build a business takes years and years and years. I've done it so many times. It takes years and years and years. You can't do it overnight. So Labour are going to be faced with this terrible, terrible mess. Very little is going to change, except things will continue to get worse and worse and worse. And in no time whatsoever, as I've said so many times before, the nation will turn against Labour. They'll say, well, what's happening? You said you were going to fix it all, and you're not fixing it all. The NHS isn't getting any better. Taxes are still high. And they're not going to have an answer for it. And this is why it was so stupid to shut off any hope of rejoining the EU ever. Because that is the only way our economy will ever recover. We're not getting trade deals all over the world. We all know that. We're not going to replace the trade we lost with the EU when we left. The only future for this country is returning to the EU, no matter how long. It may take 20 years, no matter how long it takes, and no matter how much humiliation that may take. And again, with regards to Starmer, I mean, I think he's a thoroughly nice guy. I think he's honest. He's obviously quite clever. I don't think he's a great politician either. You see, because when you prevaricate, when you are foolish enough to rule out rejoining the EU, when you are foolish enough when your party votes for PR and you're foolish enough to say, no, that's not a priority, I'm not going to do that. When you say you're not going to repeal the Public Order Act, which is the most draconian act of Parliament that the Tories have brought in regarding giving police control over what makes us a police state. When you say these things, and when, for example, in the House of Lords last week, debating the Rwanda bill, Labour peer after Labour peer got up and gave these very, very good speeches, some fantastic speeches about how wrong it was to go to Rwanda, to send people to Rwanda. And then at the end of it, Labour abstained. I mean, there may be some reason for that I don't understand, but that seems to me dithering. And I think I think the problem is that when you dither like this, when you're not really leading, you're just following what you think the Red Wall voters will accept, you come across as being very weak. And whenever anybody's asked about what do you think about Starmer, you so often hear people say, well, I don't really know what he stands for. What this country needs right now, really, really badly above everything else, is some good, strong, honest leadership that we can all get behind. But millions of people who will vote Labour, like me, will vote Labour next election, will do so knowing that you don't agree with half the things that Starmer's saying. You don't agree with remaining out of the EU forever. But anyway, that's where we are. And as I say, I know I will upset all sorts of people. I know all sorts of people are going to write comments saying that it's all a strategy to deceive the voters to get their votes. And in fact, he doesn't mean what he's saying. Well, I don't think that's good enough. So anyhow, that's what I think about it. If you watched this far, thank you as always. If you haven't already subscribed, I really, really do need some more subscribers. I really would appreciate it if you'd subscribe, or if you know anybody you'd recommend these videos to, I'd appreciate it. And so until next time, thank you very much for watching, and bye for now.